Welcome to Codex History of Video Games. I'm Mike Coletta.
And I'm Tyler Osby.
And today we got a very special episode. We have our interview with the author of the Boss Fight Book Minesweeper and the gaming editor at Ars Technica. Please help us welcome Kyle Orland. Hi, Kyle.
Yay.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'd like to say please help us welcome because in my mind they're clapping for you while they're listening to this. I would hope so.
Don't take your hands off the wheel if you're driving, though.
Yeah, don't do that. That's
you can pipe in the canned applause right there.
That's true. I could.
Oh yeah, I got a little applause button here.
Oh, you got it. Here we go.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Wow.
I feel like I've never used
That's
that
right
on
off
podcast
there.
before.
Yeah. Well, this is great. So we came here today to talk about your book Minesweeper, about Minesweeper, and for Boss Fight Books. And Tyler and I both read the book, and we loved it. And we got a lot of questions for you about it. And I think we should just get into it. Tyler, do you want to just start with the first one on there?
Yeah. So I when I heard that there was a book about Minesweeper, I was like, okay. Is there a lot there for Minesweepers? Really a lot there for a book? So I was very pleasantly surprised when, there's a lot there. What made you want to write a book about Minesweeper?
Yeah, when you look at the other Boss Fight books, Minesweeper kind of stands out. You know, it doesn't really have a storyline. It doesn't have a plot to the game itself or anything. But when I really started looking into it, I think Minesweeper probably has the highest ratio of total hours played to total words written about it in the history of gaming. You know, this was a game that was on every Windows computer for 2 decades, and hundreds of millions of people played and got addicted to, but there's never really been a deep treatment of it. There have been a few articles, a few interviews here and there, but I thought there must be more to it. So when I started thinking of what I wanted to pitch for a Boss Fight book, I looked into Minesweeper and I found there was this whole competitive scene. I found that there was this whole moral panic about it in the 90s. I found there was this whole history of Microsoft just getting into gaming and Minesweeper being one of the keys to early Windows gaming in general. And I thought, okay, these are stories that, you know, I've never heard. Everyone's heard of Minesweeper, but I've never really heard these stories told. So I thought, you know, there's probably a book here rather than, you know, another book about another Mario game, which have been done to death. You know, those are also popular, but they've been written about. I wanted to find something that was kind of an unplumbed area of history, and I hope it turned out interesting.
It did. I was fascinated.
Great.
Yeah, I was also like wondering what this is going to be like, but you go so much into like a lot of stuff at Microsoft, and it's specifically what got me is so the creators of there's 2 like official creators of Minesweeper, of Kurt Johnson and Robert Donner. And they both created it as like a side project, is what I understand.
Yeah, these were not like professional game developers that were looking to make the next big viral hit. They were programmers on Microsoft Office that were looking to learn the new Windows environment. And they saw this whole history of old Minesweeper style games that date back, 10, 15 years before. And they said, okay, I'll, just work off of this and try and adapt it for Windows. And they did this without even thinking that it was ever going to be a commercial product. This was just something to learn the Windows interface. And, they released it onto the corporate network. And then, people testing the new Windows environment late at night, they want a break. They get into Minesweeper. They find that it's addictive. Even, Bill Gates gets into it, which I talk about a lot in the book. And from there, it kind of balloons into this whole Windows Entertainment Pack, which goes along with a bunch of other games. But yeah, it's interesting when you talk to Donner and Johnson. I managed to talk to Donner, but Johnson unfortunately passed away a few years ago, unfortunately. But in interviews that they've done, they really do not think much about their role in Minesweeper. This is a household name. If I made a game like Minesweeper that everyone, knew, at least it's household name, I would bring that up the first chance I got at every house party. I'd be like, hey, have you guys heard of Minesweeper? That was, I kind of did that. But they're like, oh, I think the work I did with Microsoft Word was much more important. I'm sorry I wasted everyone's time with this, silly little game that I thought was just a programming exercise. So that really kind of fascinated me. This was not something that was designed to become a big hit. It was just they don't really take that much pride in it. It's just kind of a thing they did in a weekend and then they're like, that's weird. It became, such a big thing. I guess, that's Microsoft's problem now.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting too, because I feel like you mentioned in the book that Minesweeper now, for a lot of people is their like coding project they do over the weekend to like practice how to code. I'm going to make Minesweeper in JavaScript or whatever they do,
And that was the origin of the game too. Yeah. It's a fun one. I mean, compared to, people like do kind of like same game, or I guess you could make, I don't know what's in it. Tic-tac-toe used to be a simple one. I don't know if I was a programmer, Minesweeper would be a fun way to do kind of like a Hello World style learning a new environment. Yeah,
definitely.
I'm going to start doing that when I do programming stuff now. I'm going to start making Minesweeper clones.
All right, great.
Okay, so you mentioned it, which is actually our next question. And that was like one of the most entertaining things for me in the book is to learn that Bill Gates was addicted to Minesweeper. Could you elaborate a little more on that?
This is my favorite set of anecdotes in the book, probably. Yeah, so Bill Gates in 1990, he was pretty rich. He wasn't the richest man in the world or anything, but Microsoft was still pretty big. And the people working on the Windows Entertainment Pack get called into get a call from Bill Gates one day, and he says, "I have a new Minesweeper record. Can you guys come in? This is like a Sunday evening." And they're like, "What?" Because they had this rule around the office, because it was going around, that you had to have eyes on every single new Minesweeper record, because it was way too easy to just edit the configuration file and fake a high score. So you had to keep the game up and show the high score, which was harder to fake in those days. But they didn't actually go to Bill Gates' office. They went to the president of Microsoft's office, because he had deleted it from his own computer. Bill Gates had, because he was too addicted to it. He was getting too much. But then he would just walk down the hall and go to this other executive's office to get his fix late at night on a Sunday. So it's this surreal scene that you can picture of Bill Gates calling in some of his executives to confirm a score. And there's another anecdote in there I really like, which Melinda Gates, who was Melinda French at the time, she was working above the group that worked on the Windows Entertainment Pack. And she sent an email at one point saying, "Please do not share any more advancements on the Minesweeper record with Bill. He has way too important things to do. Any time he spends on Minesweeper is wasted time, and it's really costing the company money," was the implication here. So this was the first sign, I think, of the productivity sapping power of a game that hadn't even come out. When you can get the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company wasting hours that should be put to other uses, that kind of shows where the panic would come from later, when rank and file employees with Windows machines at their desks would also, there would be fears of them goofing off by the busload because they have a game right there on their desktop. And, so if it can affect Bill Gates, it could affect anyone, I guess, is the thought.
Nobody is immune. I don't want to spoil it in the book, but the way that they get around or the way they get Bill Gates to just kind of stop playing is really funny. And so yes. I don't want to spoil it, because I think it's worth reading. But
there's some good tongue-in-cheek humor there from Bill Gates himself too.
Yeah, it's very clever. Yeah. So I want to ask you a question of so we're talking about Minesweeper, but another game that was really, really popular, I would have guessed more popular. Maybe it is, but I don't. I want to talk about like Solitaire versus Minesweeper.
Oh, sure.
What's not what's the difference, but like why talk about Minesweeper and not Solitaire?
Solitaire is definitely more popular. There's a lot of people who see Minesweeper, and so I get two reactions when I talk about Minesweeper. Actually, one is, "Oh, I played that game once. I clicked around for 5 seconds and I lost immediately and I gave up." Or, "Oh, I figured out that game and I got obsessed with it for months. I've played it, obsessively." Those are pretty much the two reactions. Some people are kind of scared away when they see numbers and they're like, "Oh, it's a math game. I don't like math." Solitaire is a lot more approachable. If you know playing cards, or if you've seen anyone playing with a real deck, you can probably figure it out just by moving the cards around. So Minesweeper has a little bit of a higher skill floor, I guess, that you need to get over. But I thought it was kind of a more interesting game to write about for all the storylines we talked about, for one. But also, Solitaire is kind of an analog game. It dates back to the 1800s. People play it with regular playing cards. Bill Clinton played Solitaire, but he didn't play it on the computer. So it's just kind of an adaptation of a real game. Minesweeper is kind of more distinctly video gamey, if that makes sense. It has a time limit. It requires use of like the mouse and keyboard. You can kind of make a pen and paper version, and people have, but it's not really exactly the same. So yeah, I just found it was a deeper vein to write about, I guess. But yeah, when you think about Minesweeper, you also think about Solitaire, which was on every single Windows machine at the same time. And I get into that a little bit in the book as well, where it's appropriate. I think the one thing that everyone remembers about Solitaire too is that cascading card thing at the end. People still bring that up as like, that was, we look at it now and we're like, oh yeah, okay, that's cute. Back then that was like, whoa, a computer can do this. That was like, the special effect of the time. If you're used to DOS or, chunky CGA graphics, you see this bouncing in full VGA and you're like calling people over. You're like, look at what my computer can do. This is the future right here.
Was the future.
Yeah.
Funny.
So you actually go into it with Solitaire too, but this whole thing was like centered around the Windows Entertainment Pack. That's like that's really kind of what put Minesweeper and everything on there. And that like almost didn't happen because there was a real fear with Microsoft about this being not something that should be on an Office product, a productivity suite, I guess is kind of how they put it, right?
Well, yeah, or the company at the time. We think of Microsoft as one of the big players in gaming now, but this was 1990. Microsoft was known for Windows, for Microsoft Office, and for Microsoft Word and Excel productivity stuff. They were selling suites for hundreds, thousands of dollars a seat to thousands of employee corporations. And then there's this team called the Entry Business Unit, and their goal is to get computers into households, which was not really a big thing in the 1990s. Penetration for personal computers was, maybe some very upper middle class people had started to do it, and that was about it. And they saw, hey, people are playing these games on the company network. Maybe this is a way to convince people there's something more to do with a home computer than just, your spreadsheets or your word processing. And they saw, if we can appeal to kids, then the kids are going to start asking their parents, oh, can we get a computer? We want to play these games. If they see it at the store, they're like, okay, it's not just, a CD-ROM encyclopedia or something. It's something fun they can do. So they start looking around for games on the network that they could adapt into this package. And they're seeing it, they want to put it together in a few months. They want it to be like a $40 game but the idea of that sitting alongside a big box of Microsoft Office, Microsoft Word on a software store shelf, that really rubs some people at Microsoft the wrong way. When they go for approvals, there are people who react pretty violently to it, reportedly, where they say, this is going to ruin our reputation. We're a serious company. Get these kids off the computer. Microsoft was fine with, other people making DOS games, but they were not really. The closest they had was like Flight Simulator, which, is kind of a game, but it's really more of a hobby for adults. You're not going to get a 10-year-old excited about getting into Flight Simulator most of the time. So, they got a lot of pushback, but eventually, I think Bill Gates's obsession kind of helped grease the wheels here. They're like, they're just trying to put together this little thing. And then when they actually talk to retailers, there's a story about Egghead Software, which I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember. No,
I'm not familiar with Egghead.
I'm not familiar with Egghead. I might be old enough, but I'm not familiar with Egghead.
It's one of those 80s retailers that really shows your age when I bring it up. But they went to a meeting apparently, and they said, oh, okay. They asked, how many are you making of this Windows Entertainment Pack, just to get a feel for how many they could order. And the guy from Microsoft, he said, well, he inflated the number of how many they were making, hoping that, okay, we can get a bigger order. So he said, okay, we're going to make, I don't remember what the number was. And I think Egghead said, okay, we'll take all of them, or we'll take a significant number of them. I'd have to look in the book for the actual
I think it was
numbers.
like 50,000. Wasn't it like it was 50,000. It was like 30,000 or 50,000. One of those
30,000 or 50,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. I should be more prepared for this, but
It's all right.
you can just read the book for this,
Read the book.
for this
Yeah,
actual details of this. And then they were, so once they heard that, they were like, okay, we got to go back. We got to up the production of this, because there's actually more demand from retailers for this kind of thing than we thought. And then when they brought it out, Windows Entertainment Pack became one of those things that, early Windows was known for. It was just kind of packaged from a lot of OEMs that were making PCs to kind of set theirs apart. You're like, okay, we'll give you this, and it'll have Free Cell, and it'll have Rattler Race or Ski Free,
Ski Free,
with the Yeti, and, or all these games that there was no copy protection on these either, so people just passed them around the office like they were candy. And Microsoft was losing money on those, but it was also kind of just a promotion for Windows, showing again that it was more than just business and productivity things. And that probably did more to sell Windows as an upgrade to DOS than anything else, like multitasking or being able to minimize a window. Like, who's going to pay for that? But if you can get Free Cell on there, that'll buy some machines.
Games are always driving forward progress.
Exactly.
Everyone
That's right.
games.
This is a little off topic, well, off the script here, but did you like talk to the people that created these games? Did they get paid for these games? Like, how did you find out more about how that worked?
Yeah, that's buried in the book there. They got it's really weird. So they got 10 shares of Microsoft stock, which at the time was not worth that much, but if you held them till today, would be worth like $200,000.
Oh, I remember this part now. Yeah,
So
it's like you had to hold on to it though.
Yes, that's still pretty good.
Yeah.
But the weirdest thing is they also got a Turbo Express handheld from NEC, which, like, of all the things, I mean, you could have given them, I don't know, a Super Nintendo, a Sega Genesis. No, Turbo Express. You want to play Keith Courage on the toilet.
That's had like a box full of these Turbo Express.
Maybe.
And was like, what can we do with these? I don't know. We'll just give them away.
They like games. They play games. Just give them games.
Yeah. But no, it's incredibly specific. But I have 3 different sources that say that was the payment you got if your game was included on Windows Entertainment Pack.
Could have been a Game Boy.
Yeah. And that's in exchange for signing over the entire rights to Microsoft and no royalties or anything. So if you divide it, 200,000 sounds pretty good for the value of that stock. But if you divide that out among like 4 billion installations of Minesweeper, it's like a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a penny every time. So, they should have held out for like 0.1% of all revenues that could have been associated with it or something.
We could have my Windows Entertainment Pack billionaires if that was the case.
Yeah, but again, they weren't thinking. Yeah, they didn't think these were going to be household names. These were like side projects. They were not looking to make. It was a different business, and Microsoft was not tuned towards games. They weren't like, we must pay top dollar for these games. The one exception, which was in the first Windows Entertainment Pack, was Tetris, which got wrapped up. If you saw the movie about Tetris that came out earlier this year, it kind of got wrapped up in that whole rights struggle. There was the console and arcade side and the portable side, but there was also the PC rights, which I think Mirrorsoft had, but then they really didn't have them because they got them from someone else. And then Microsoft came in and they're like, we want to actually buy them. And Russia was like, oh, Microsoft, we've heard of you. Yeah, okay, sure. We will let you pay us money for the actual rights. And that's how the official Windows version of Tetris first showed up as a Microsoft product.
That was a surprisingly decent movie. I didn't think it was going to be that great, and it was fun.
It depends what you're going in expecting. If you want, I was kind of offended about how much they changed as someone who knows the actual story. But
it's not
especially
a documentary.
But it is goofy fun, especially by the end.
Yeah. It's a fun like thriller that just sort of has this Tetris thing as like the backdrop to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could have been worse.
Yeah. So then we go from the Windows Entertainment Pack to being included directly with Windows 3.1. That's like a real turning point, I think. Can you talk about that a little bit?
It's weird. I wanted to find out who made that decision that created 4 billion installations of Minesweeper and made it kind of unavoidable for anyone who had a Windows computer. And this is one of those frustrating things when you're doing historical research where you kind of run into kind of a lack of documentation and a lack of memory. Every avenue I went down, they were kind of like, yeah, I don't really remember why we did that. I don't remember who was behind that decision. The people at the Windows Entertainment Pack were kind of actually bitter about it. They got an email from the operating system side, and they're like, oh, we're going to put Minesweeper on every operating system now, so it's not going to be a Windows Entertainment Pack thing. And they were trying to prove, hey, we can sell these games. Why are you giving them away for free? So there was a little bit of internal rivalry there, but as far as, they didn't see Minesweeper as like a particularly unique selling point or anything, as far as I can tell, or anything like that. Someone just made the decision one day, and that was it.
Yeah, and because like people aren't buying Windows specifically for Minesweeper, at least I would assume not. Maybe I'm not going to say a single copy was never sold for that reason, but I can imagine the Windows Entertainment Pack people being upset about that, because that probably was a selling point for the Windows Entertainment Pack, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think it kind of helped Windows 3.1 stand out. Like when you see it at a store display, you can look in the games folder and there's something there, besides Minesweeper or besides Solitaire. So that helps a little bit. But yeah, I don't know how you would even market on a balance sheet the value of Minesweeper per Windows install, or how many more copies they sold because Minesweeper was in there. It's got to be such a fraction of a fraction. And especially then it becomes this vestigial part of Windows for 15, 20 years after, just out of habit, they keep including it. And in 2005, who's looking at Minesweeper on Windows and saying, oh, that's going to affect my purchase decision. I'm going to go with Windows over Mac because Windows is the Minesweeper OS. It's
yeah. Oh, I heard they took Minesweeper out this time, so I'm not upgrading.
Well, but then they did take it out, and it kind of became a thing because you had to go to the Windows Store to download a version. And I go into a whole thing in the book about how that version is loaded with ads and has kind of changed things for the worse in a lot of ways with a lot of modern design decisions. And yeah, I don't want to give too much away about that, but it really highlights the good and the bad of what happens when you re-examine a game like this 20 years later.
Yeah. So we're going to get into the nitty gritty now. This is what Tyler and I think both of us in the book, we were just so surprised by this, but I want to talk a little bit about the competitive Minesweeper scene.
Yes. I was surprised when I found this in my research. People compete at this game at the high levels.
So that's kind of my first thought was like, did you know about this when you went into the book, or did you discover this naturally as you were researching it?
I discovered it just before I pitched the book. I was like, okay, let me look and see what's available online. And I've found this amazing resource called the Authoritative Minesweeper, which has kind of tracked the history of a bunch of antecedents to Minesweeper, but also the competitive history, which is very internecine forum drama driven type thing. It's gone between, different websites and different personalities. And there's, you could write a whole book just about that. But I decided to focus on one specific part of that drama. And yeah, when I found that this existed, I was like, this is the last piece. This is what I think makes it book worthy, because it's not just the creation of the game. It's not just its part in business history or in social history of being included with all these business computers. It's the players themselves have an interesting history. The people, a lot of people get obsessed with Minesweeper. They'll play it for a few months. Maybe they'll get in a competition with their office mates or their dorm mates, and then they get over it. These people kept the addiction for years and years, and we're driving each other with new strategies and new lower times, and the ways that developed into questions about the nature of competition and the nature of cheating was just fascinating in a way that I was like, how do more people not know about this? And that's so I wanted to kind of bring that to the fore a little bit.
Yeah, there's one thing I've learned about people, like humans, is that like they will optimize the fun out of anything, right? Like,
yes,
if there's a way to do something better, even if it's not fun, they will do that. I say,
especially if there's especially if there's an opportunity for some level of social promotion there. Like if you can be number one on some list, and this is not, you're not getting a gold medal at the Olympics. This isn't a list that like a few dozen people in the world even care about. But for these people, this was like, no, I will find any edge I can to be that number one person on that list. And I will argue very deeply about what constitutes a legal way to get number one on that list as well.
Yeah, because like by the end of it, it feels like it's not even the same game. They're not playing Minesweeper. They're doing something different that's like not what the game was originally. I mean, not that there was really any intention for the game to be competitive in any way when it was made, but like it's just so interesting to me how people like it's a different game by the end,
Yeah, well, I don't know how much we want to get into.
It's kind of up to you, like, whatever you want to give away, because it is really interesting, and it is like this kind of like two camps, right, of arguing over what this should be. And
so I guess I'll introduce it this way, because if you do the math, the number of possible games of even like intermediate Minesweeper is comparable to like the number of atoms in the universe or something. I list the actual number in the book, but it's like
it's a big number.
22 digits, 23 digits, one of those ridiculous thought exercises, not literally infinite. So you could be pretty sure that when you load a game of Minesweeper, it's supposed to be a game that no one has ever seen before. You might see similar ones, but no one has ever seen this exact arrangement of mines, which is perfect for kind of this roguelike, reward loop. Like, okay, maybe this next one will be this amazing setup that's really ready for a good record. Whereas, so it keeps you clicking, it gives you that random reward. But then as these competitive people start playing and getting new records, they're finding that they're getting these records on the same exact board, which, should not be possible. Like in millennia and millennia of, if you had planets and planets of Minesweeper players, this would not happen. Something's obviously wrong with the random number generator. So they go from there. They call this the dream board. Eventually they find there's a way to get the dream board. And if you know the dream board is coming, or if you know what to look for, you know exactly where to click, exactly the fastest way to get it. So then you're finding people getting lower and lower times because of this. But like you said, it's a different game at that point. Unfair prior knowledge is kind of the watchword in the community. The whole idea of Minesweeper is, you don't know what's coming every time you click that smiley face. You're reacting in real time. And the dream board kind of throws this out. But in another way, it's not really cheating. No one's using like tools to sniff memory out, or, an external program to like automatically click or anything. They're humans playing the game as it was designed. But, it's not how it was intended. So it kind of goes from there. And we discuss in the book how it kind of almost tore the community apart in a lot of ways. And there's email receipts and forum receipts from this, where if you've ever been in late 90s, early 2000s internet drama, it will be very familiar to you. But if you haven't, it's a peek into how vigorous these debates can get over these small things that only a few dozen people in the world were really paying attention to, but they were fighting to the death over what the meaning of Minesweeper is at some point, what the meaning of competitive rules are, and whether just because it's something you can do, is it something that you should do, or is it something that you should be allowed to do just because of some, quirk of history? So read the book if you find it at all compelling.
Yeah, it's very interesting to me. I love that part of the book.
I did not read a book on Minesweeper thinking I would discover a major philosophical conundrum, but I did.
Wow, I'm going to put that on the back of the cover.
It's pretty great. So we actually have some other questions. Like you mentioned Dreamboard and the randomness. Are you comfortable? Like because I think their solution to how they tried to handle it with this like Congress they made.
Oh, sure.
Can we talk about that a little bit? We don't have to talk about results, but I think that it's like an interesting way of like how they govern themselves.
Yeah, it's there's no Microsoft had nothing to do with this. They weren't keeping track of records. It was just a group of people gathering on this website. They weren't even talking in forums. They were talking on a web guest book, which I don't know if your listeners even are going to be aware of what a guest book is, unless they're
it is a history podcast, so we can talk about the history.
We can talk about the history of the internet.
Right.
Guest book thing, yeah.
Yeah, well, this was like a single forum thread that people were meant to just say, "Hi, I like your website," but instead people use this for like hundreds and hundreds of pages, just going back and forth about arguments about these records. So eventually, a group of some of these high-level players are like, "Okay, this argument is getting out of hand. We need to set up some sort of authoritative body that's going to set the rules, and everyone will agree to them because we say we're the WinMine Congress, and we're well-respected players, and we're going to debate it, and then everyone's going to agree." And so they email back and forth kind of for a year. Some people drop out, some people lose interest, and they don't really publicly discuss anything while this is going on, while people are still using this abuse to get lower and lower scores. And so, I don't want to give away how it ends, kind of, but it's kind of a fascinating look into how the community tries to self-police itself. They create this pseudo-governmental body to try and fix things, where in the end, what really fixed things is new clones of Minesweeper that just fixed the randomization bug. And eventually the community of high-level players moved on. You cannot actually use Microsoft Minesweeper anymore. The game that created it, they will not accept scores from it because it's not really tuned for various things. You can repeat the same board over and over. There are ways to know what board is coming next. So you have to use one of these approved clones that have they give more statistics, but also they fix it so that it's provably random in a way that ensures that no one's getting an unfair advantage.
That's pretty cool. This is actually kind of a question that I had anyway too. Did you play a lot of Minesweeper for the book? Cause I know it's kind of like a weird thing to ask because it is like a game that's very simple. Did you play these clones? Did you play the competitive versions? Did you try them out? Because I was always wondering about that, for this, because you do mention at the end the clones
Yes.
that are out there.
I played a lot of different versions of Minesweeper. Some of the early ones that inspired it, the later ones made by Microsoft, that have been on Windows 7, and everything. I played, some of the highly competitive ones. There's some online versions that have statistics progressions where you'll get RPG style experience points, and which don't affect the game at all, but it's just to get you to keep playing. But one of the problems with writing a book like this is that you can, if you're feeling stuck or you don't know what to do next, you can play an hour or two of Minesweeper, and you're like, oh yeah, this is research for the book. I'm not wasting time. I'm not procrastinating. This is going to help the book. And then it's 2 hours later, and you're like, I don't have any more words than I did 2 hours ago. I've just, this was just a waste of time. So, but that did give me maybe new insight into the part of the book where I talk about all the time that gets wasted with Minesweeper and all the fears of being unproductive, I guess. Minesweeper is a game I've played off and on for 2 decades now, since my mom first showed it to me on her office computer. And the thing is, I'll get obsessed with it for a few months and then kind of peter out. And then a few years later, I'll be like, oh, Minesweeper, I remember this, when I'm looking for a new game to play. It's because it's always there on a Windows machine. And then I'll reach some new plateau of skill and fall off again. But it always, I always come back to it as kind of this familiar thing where I can track my progress as far as, hands-eye coordination and logic, and it feels like a comfortable thing to come back to, and it's still just as addictive every time. It really stands the test of time in that way, I think.
Yeah, that actually made me want to like find an old Windows machine and try to find it, like go to accessories and go into games and pull it up,
Yeah, you can still doubt it. The most popular versions now are probably on mobile phones, but I don't know if you've ever tried playing Minesweeper on a touchscreen. I find you have to switch between marking mines mode and then marking clear spaces mode, and you don't have that left and right click, which can do it immediately. And plus, sometimes you have to like scroll the screen if you can't see every block at once, or if you have fat fingers, you might mistap. It's a shame. It's really an artifact of that mouse and keyboard thing. And the mouse was brand new back then, so they talked about. Donner has said, he wanted to use marking flags on the right click because they wanted to show off that Windows mice had 2 buttons compared to the one on Macintosh. So it was really designed for that. And, Windows gamers still have that. But, as more gaming moves to like portable systems or consoles or phones, it really loses something if you're not in that same environment, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Was there anything during the research of this book that you discovered that you just didn't think would be a thing? Like anything we didn't talk about already?
The competitive environment was definitely the biggest of those. But also, I did the usual search of like old newspaper databases. And the biggest thing that turned up was all these 90s stories about how business and government leaders were incredibly worried that these Windows PCs came with games built in. Minesweeper and Solitaire were seen as this scourge that was going to cost the U.S. economy, hundreds of millions of dollars, because people were going to be goofing off at their computers instead of doing work. Not like it's hard to find ways to goof off anyway, but it's weird because, you think of 90s moral panics around video games. You think, Doom, Mortal Kombat, Night Trap, and the congressional hearings. But yeah, Minesweeper and Solitaire, there was a congressional bill to ban games from all federal government computers that was focused on these 2 games. It didn't go anywhere, but it was actually proposed in the U.S. Congress. It just goes to show you that, anything new is going to anything that's not familiar to an older generation, especially in the workplace, is going to be seen as a threat. And by the end of the 90s, the internet kind of became the new boogeyman, and should we be tracking people's internet access at work? But in the early 90s, it was kind of presaged by Minesweeper and Solitaire being the thing that was kind of seen as a Trojan horse, where these productivity machines actually have this anti-productivity problem on them, and you have to be very wary, and you have to ban it or delete it, or else your business is going to be in trouble.
Yeah, it seems like the opposite of why they bought the machines in the first place. Like, you were supposed to be more productive, but this game is making you less productive. So,
yeah.
I'm going to make sure now, though, anytime someone wants to talk about like a moral panic in video games, I'll bring up Minesweeper first for you.
Yeah.
Kyle, just to throw them all off. Just to be like, yeah, I got a better one for you.
And you can tell them, read all about it. I got the book for you.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think that kind of does it with our like questions for the day. But I want to thank you for being here. Like, it was so great to have you on the podcast, and we're going to do our next segment, which is what you've been playing. Where we ask people what they've been playing. So do you have any games you can include Minesweeper that you've been playing lately, Kyle?
No, not a lot of Minesweeper. Lately I've been taken up with the big releases of the month for review. I did Spider-Man 2 and Super Mario Wonder.
Oh,
at the
I'm
same
playing those
time.
right now too. Anyway, sorry.
I played them a few weeks ago, so you guys.
You got me
Ooh.
beat.
Yeah, it's one of the perks of the job sometimes. But it was a lot to do at once, and plus the MetaQuest 3 came out at the same time,
Oh,
which
yeah.
I also did a review of, and I really liked. I Expect You to Die 3 on there. I don't know if you guys have played these games, but it's like a VR kind of an adventure puzzle game. You're sitting in a seat and you have to solve this puzzle before you're killed by poison gas or something crushing you. And it's this old timey like 1960s campy
Ooh.
spy thriller thing. And it's got a theme song and it's got sassy talking robots in like retrofuturism. And it's got so much style and so much silly puzzle solving in like the Maniac Mansion style. I really got into that too. So
That's awesome. Okay, this is gonna this might open up a whole new tangent, but I have been a person that has been kind of like holding off on VR. I'm like, is it ready? Do you think it's getting to the point now where it's like worth it to buy a VR headset?
There's no, as much as I like, so I Expect You to Die 3, there's no real killer app that I would recommend to anyone. If you really want to use it for like exercise or rhythm gaming, like if you want to play Beat Saber or Supernatural, then I'd say, yeah, go for it. Okay. But, if you can hook it up to your PC for Half-Life Alyx, but then that's over in 10 hours and you're like, okay, well, what now? There's a lot of little games, but
it's still not there yet.
If you're still a skeptic, I don't think there's nothing I can say. The tech has gotten better, but the games have gotten about the same.
Okay, yeah. I'm just waiting for that. Yeah. AAA crazy like RPG 100 hours in VR. That's what I want,
Yeah, everyone keeps trying for that, but also I don't know if you really want to spend 100 hours in a VR headset, isolated from the rest of the world. You can't even hard to check your phone. You can't switch away to social media or whatever. It's and plus if everyone thinks about the amazing wave, like, oh, you can walk around this virtual world, you can actually swing your arm and as a sword or fire at things, and people don't realize that gets really tiring and tiresome after a while. We're used to sitting there and just barely moving our thumbs, and we're like, we're actually doing this. But if you actually have to do these things, you're like, this is not what I signed up for. This is I did not want it. I want to actually do these things, but also I want to be strong enough and buff enough to do these things. And you find there's a real dichotomy there when it kind of ruins the fantasy, I guess, when you're the one swinging your arm and you're like, oh man, I got to do this hundreds more times. How did these knights actually
buy?
Yeah.
You just play Beat Saber to get. I mean, I guess you could like Beat Saber is probably a workout. You get like into it, maybe.
Beat Saber is the one I keep coming back to. I play that 1 or 2 times a week to this day. But I'm a big rhythm game fan, and I use it as an excuse to work out. So
nice. Well, Tyler, do you have anything else you've been playing, or not? Really, is that kind of it, Kyle?
Those are the big ones I could say.
Big ones. Okay. Well, Tyler, what you been playing this week?
Well, I have also been playing Super Mario Wonder and Spider-Man 2 because they just came out this weekend for us normal folks. We have to play games on release date. No, I'm really enjoying Super Mario Wonder. Feels so good, like just compared to like the new Super Mario Bros. Games are all pretty good, but there's always felt like there was something missing. And I kind of always thought that it was like I used to play Super Mario World, Super Mario 3, whatever. I played those when I was a kid. There was just more to it. There's more wonder to it, right? But Super Mario Wonder, it feels like it has that again. Like there's just something about it that just feels so. It doesn't feel like a gimmick, the Wonder Flower thing where everything gets all weird and like acid trippy. It doesn't feel like a gimmick. It feels like it takes it to the next level, which is really fun. And then I also started playing Spider-Man 2 last night. I played that for a couple of hours, and it's more Spider-Man, and it's good. Like the first Spider-Man game, our Spider-Man games are they're really good.
Spider-Man,
yeah. They're really good, and so if you like those, you'll like this one. But that's kind of it in terms of stuff that I've just been playing this week. Those are 2 big ones. What about you, Mike?
I have been playing. Well, I have 2 games I've been playing, but one I can't talk about because it's our Halloween episode next week. So I got to not talk about it. It's a surprise. But I've been playing Pokemon Violet, I got back to it again. I have this like long, Kyle, I have a long backlog of Switch games I've bought that I haven't beaten. And I'm just trying to go through them right now because I really want to play Wonder. And Wonder is the game that I know my wife would want to play too, because we love like 2D side-scrolling Marios. Like that's what we play together. So I'm just trying to beat all these old, like I beat Metroid Prime Remastered. I'm in Pokemon Violet now. I got Tears of the Kingdom I got to beat still. I'm just trying to make my way down those. And then eventually I'll get to a point where maybe at the holidays we can play Wonder when we're both on like break. You know, that's the goal anyway. But I mean, I like Pokemon Violet. I think it's kind of funny because they very much are playing into this gag of we're going to make corny jokes and just fully embrace that we're making corny jokes. And I'm like, okay, well, that's good that you've embraced it. Because the guy's in disguise, but you clearly know it's him and they're just picking fun at that. But I'm like, why even do it? But I'm enjoying it. And then the game I'm playing for next week, I am pleasantly surprised by. I will just put it that way because it's kind of an older game. I was worried it would be a slog, and just based on everything I've heard of it, and I'm actually really excited to talk about it next week. But that's kind of all I've been playing. Anything you want to plug, Kyle, before we go? Like anything, like your website or just Ars Technica? Just anything?
Yeah, Ars Technica. You can find me on Blue Sky these days if you have an invite. Kyle ORL on there is where I post a bunch of funny memes, mostly, or politics takes. And yeah, otherwise you can find my writing at Ars Technica, like you have been able to for the last 11 or 12 years somehow.
Awesome. Yeah, it's amazing.
That's fun. I love Ars Technica. That's a
thanks.
website that I find myself going back to often. I really loved the Mac OS 10 deep dives that John Syracuse used to do. I think that was Ars Technica, right?
We still try and keep doing those, but no one can keep up with what Syracuse used to do.
They were like 20 pages long.
Oh, it was amazing. I don't know how he turned that around so fast.
Well, other things you could do to support us, you can go to codexpodcast.net. That has all of our links to it, our link to our Discord. You get as a contact form there. If you want to just send us an email directly, you do that at codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com. But with that, I think that's going to do it for the day. Tyler, do you want to say goodbye to everybody?
Sure. Goodbye, everybody. And thanks, Kyle.
Yeah. Thanks, Kyle.
Bye, everyone.